Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is set to introduce many new elements to the Star Wars franchise that will change certain pieces of Star Wars lore, as well as how we perceive both the prequels and the original trilogy. This is Mike Zero. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, as we go through, of course, the year of 2019, every single month that passes by, we are only getting closer to the release date of Episode 9 by JJ. And what's really interesting about this film is that, yes, we do know that they are treating this movie as a course correction for the sequel trilogy, ever since The Last Jedi Backlash and the Solo: A Star Wars Story box office results and whatever have you, right? Now, what's really intriguing about Episode 9 has all to do with George Lucas. Now, these past couple of weeks or so, we've been learning a whole lot more about this film, and when it all comes down to one of the set leaks, this is where things begin to get very exciting for this movie. Now, specifically, it's described that one of the scenes that were shot during the month of December involved both Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. It's described that George Lucas directed a scene that involves the concept of a flash fight, and that it was George who approved this idea from J.J. Abrams, as it was described to be a powerful way to bring Star Wars fans back to the original films during a saber duel. It said that George Lucas directed a scene with Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley in which they were fighting on the world of Tatooine during one of their flash fights. It's described that George handpicked some of the worlds that should appear through this new ability during one of the duels between both Kylo and Rey, and that George even came up with the ideas for certain stunts for the scenes that were given to the stunt coordinator. It said that the reason the prequel trilogy choreography is returning in the film all comes from George Lucas, and is exactly why fans saw Rey perform that backflip in the teaser trailer. So I want to go over a couple of parts about this. Now, this is exactly why I think George Lucas coming back for The Rise of Skywalker in some way, shape, or form is a very healthy thing for the sequel trilogy. It's also a great way for fans to have, I guess you could say, a bit more trust in the sequel trilogy with Disney and Lucasfilm, because now that George is somewhat attached to this movie, yes, he's not the main director, but he did direct some scenes here and there, as well as he approved some sequences that were actually done by J.J. Abrams and written by J.J. You know, the fact that George is actually involved in The Rise of Skywalker and was directly responsible for exactly how Emperor Palpatine would return in this movie really does speak volumes. Now, the biggest question of all, of course, and I do ask this, plenty of times, is, of course, is this a genuine move by Disney and Lucasfilm to have George Lucas on board, or is this an act of desperation? We do know that as of right now, there's a lot of people upset with The Last Jedi, and still very much are, and if you look at The Rise of Skywalker, this movie really determines the future of the Star Wars franchise and where everything is really going to go. So with that being said, how George Lucas approved the idea of flash fights and even handpicked a couple of the worlds that are set to appear in these flash fights between both Rey and Kylo. Now, if you guys are just tuning in and are very confused as to what flash fights really are, they are basically a mixture of lightsaber duels, flashbacks, and even the Force Bond ability between both Rey and Kylo Ren. And it's really going to allow us to take a trip down memory lane for the Star Wars franchise from different eras, such as the originals, the prequels, and yes, even parts of the sequel trilogy will be returning in these flash fights throughout the whole entire Episode 9 lightsaber duel. So what do I think about George Lucas actually, being a part of the flash fight sequences and even being able to handpick some of the worlds that would appear in these sequences? Now, this is the main reason as to why Tatooine is being used for at least one of the scenes in the flash fights, and why exactly we went over how one of them explains that Jabba's palace was seen, as well as the Lars homestead in this movie. So I think that this is a great way and a step in the right direction, if you will, by, of course, Disney and Lucasfilm in order to bring the fans together. Now, of course, there's always a big debate out there. There's also a lot of Star Wars fans that will say that no amount of nostalgia or no amount of callbacks to the originals or the prequels would really kind of bring things back to normal again. And that may be the case. It's all a matter of how this thing's going to be written and how well it's going to be executed on the big screen. Like I say, on paper and on the script, it can be anything. It's all a matter of how it's done, with visual effects and dialogue and whatever have you, right? there's a lot of aspects of a movie that makes it, well, a movie, right? So when we look at Kylo Ren and Rey, the fact that they are going to be using this ability and how it was approved by George Lucas and how George actually directed a couple of scenes with Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley for these sequences, I'm going to go ahead and say that I do have trust in these flash fights because, let's face it, you know, if you look at the Anakin and Obi-Wan lightsaber duel, it was amazing. It was like a huge adrenaline rush when I watched it for the first time in theaters back in '05. And one thing I will say is that, you know, it really was an emotional roller coaster. You knew what Anakin was going through, as well as exactly what Obi-Wan Kenobi was trying to defend himself for. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon.